time for On the Farm in Alabama, bringing farmers and agribusiness the latest news from Alabama Extension and the Auburn University College of Agriculture. Now here's your host, Alabama Extension Regional Agent, Eddie McGriff.
Good day. I'd like to welcome you today to On the Farm in Alabama, and today as my guest I have Dr. David Russell. He is a weed scientist with Alabama Extension and Auburn University, and today we're going to be talking about weed control in soybeans. So the first thing I need to mention, David, is that we have lost the dicamba over the top for soybeans, and so we do have an option still. The Enlist soybeans with the 2,4-D choline is still an option, but talk a little bit about the loss of dicamba and what that is going to mean for weed control in soybeans.
Yeah, that's true. I don't want to get too technical into the policy of why we lost dicamba, but I think it's sort of a perfect storm between the regulatory agencies, the Endangered Species Act, environmental groups, and just the bottleneck at the governmental level in the regulatory process, not being able to get some of these labels approved. And so here we are, first part of April of 2025, we do not have dicamba options over the top of DT cotton and soybean this year. So we've got to kind of go back to the drawing board, if you will, go back to some of the pre-dicamba days of thinking about other options, and we do have other options.
Well, one thing I'd like to mention is it's important to get, the residuals out, and especially your pre-emergence residual. And one of the great products that we've always had has been Metribuzin, the old Syncor, Lexon, that farmers remember. But we've got away from that. That is a tremendous residual herbicide.
Yep. Roundup Ready made it easy back in the 90s for weed control. Dicamba has made it really easy here lately to control some of these broadleaf weeds. So we're going to have to talk about timeliness and overlay and residuals. And I really like Metribuzin because we don't see a lot of that used, at least by itself. We still really do get good control on a lot of these susceptible weeds. And so Metribuzin by itself is a relatively cheaper product. It's been around for many years, and it's a good tank mix partner. We've mentioned about the synergism that it adds in burn down situations when you pair it with Gramoxone. Beside that, it's a good tank mix partner that provides some soil residual pre-emergence, pre-plant, those timings before the crop emerges to extend our level of weed control past the crop emergence. And so without dicamba being an option over the top, I think we're going to have to rely on some of these residuals. Considering the past weather events we've had the last couple of years have been extremely dry. So if we find ourselves mid-July and we've got weeds, I don't want us to be relying solely on those post-emergence options when the environmental conditions aren't conducive to allow really good herbicide activity. And so with prices too, you got to consider prices in the current environment of economics here. We got to rely on the moisture that we have early season to activate some of those soil residuals like Metribuzin.
Well, so we have Metribuzin, we have other ones like Dual, but I would like to talk about some that we don't think about, and they come in a lot of different trade names. If you look at Fierce, there's a lot of combination products. I think there's 4 different Fierces that you can buy, but it's Zidua plus a combination product. It may be Valor or even Classic. So, and then also we have Anthem and Authority, and these are all products when we need to look at Zidua and see which combination we want to use. But there's a lot of products out there that have Zidua as a base. So let's talk a little bit about Zidua as far as a residual.
So the active in Zidua is peroxysulfone, as you mentioned. Very good product, especially for the grasses. We think of pigweeds oftentimes, and that has been the main broadleaf weed that's driving a lot of these weed control recommendations. That's mainly been because of how aggressive that weed is and how many seed it produces per plant. We don't want to let any of those plants go to seed because we'll be dealing with that for many years to come. But peroxysulfone has been good. We've got excellent crop safety with those Zidua type products. If we can get it soil incorporated through a rainfall, it has been very good for us on a lot of cotton and soybean acres. In the case of cotton, we've got that as an option to be applied through impregnated fertilizer, but very good as a pre-emergence in soybeans that extends our level of weed control. So I mentioned the grasses, the goose grasses, the sprangle tops, crabgrass, a lot of those troublesome grasses that may not germinate until later in the spring. Peroxysulfone is a very good product. And when you start thinking about overlaying that and combining single actives with the group 15s like esmetolachlor or acetochlor, the warrant type products, or metribuzin, as we mentioned, that's combining a group 15 with a group 5 herbicide. You extend your level of control and kind of overcome any of those resistance issues that we may see in the field.
So we talked just right now about the importance of a pre-emerge herbicide. Then we're going to talk now about post-emerge. And we have a lot of products, but we need to look at not only when we're combining it with our Roundup, if it's Roundup Ready Cotton, or Liberty if it's Liberty Cotton, we need to look at putting another residual down. And we have a lot of excellent products that we can put out with it. Dual, first rate, even combination products like Prefix, which is dual in reflex. So talk a little bit about when we need to put out our post-emerge on soybeans and some of the options that we have.
Yeah, so a lot of those post-emergence treatments are going to be applied that mid-vegetative stage before R1. It's going to hopefully control the weeds that may have emerged from our residual applied back at planting, but still extend that level of weed control through canopy closure. So the dimethenamide type products that you mentioned are really good. Those PPO products like the reflex type products are really good and provides some level of soil residual. You might see some speckling on some soybeans at the vegetative stage, so just be mindful of your soil textures and the CEC and the pH on some of those. But usually under favorable environmental conditions, we will usually have soybeans grow out of any of that injury. It's typically just cosmetic from those PPO chemistries causing some speckling on the leaves. It usually will grow out of that and not cause a yield decline, but it does add a little bit more to our weed control program. You mentioned the enlist. I do suspect that we will see increased enlist acres across the state for cotton and soybean in the absence of dicamba options. Considering any weeds that may be emerged like the pigweeds later on, I would not rely on just a single active like Enlist by itself or Liberty by itself, but I think that is a good tank mix combination to get anything that may be small. And when we say small, Eddie, we're talking like 3 inches or less. We're not talking 10 inches to a foot tall. So that's the importance of scouting or having a scout look at your field constantly so you can catch some of these. These weeds are sneaky. The goose grasses and even the prickly cider that I'm hearing more about can come up really quick. And so if you miss a few days, you'll come back to really tall weeds.
Yeah. Well, when we talk about prickly cider, many people know it as tea weed. That's become more of a problem in North Alabama. And what options would you say on tea weed or prickly cider?
So we got to shift our mindset a little bit about that, because I don't think a lot of these group 15s like the esmetolachlor that we've mentioned are really strong on that. I think those products like Python are really good on that particular weed species, and so again, getting that down at emergence or just before emergence, I think will help at least get us through canopy closure. So that's a product that we don't typically see on a lot of acreage, so it may be a little bit more expensive or hard to come by, but I think we do have to kind of shift our mindset. And if you don't have that or don't have access to products like Python, then again, the importance of scouting and catching those tea-weed when they're really small, I think the combination of 2,4-D and Liberty will help. I don't think it will give you extended levels of control because it's a post-emergence only. No residual there, but with Python you get a little bit extended levels of soil residual control.
I want to thank David for being with us today on the farm in Alabama. And remember, if you ate today, you have a farmer's bank.